That seat is for my real son. Get out. My father said that to me at his retirement party in front of 80 people. Then, he shoved me. Not hard enough to look violent. Just hard enough to send me backward off the low platform and onto the hardwood floor of the country club ballroom. I hit shoulder first, the seam of my navy blazer splitting along the sleeve. It was my mother's jacket. She used to wear it to anniversary dinners. I had it tailored to fit me when I turned 25. I wore it that night because she couldn't be there and because I thought honoring her would remind him who I was. I didn't know it would be the night he erased me. Behind him, Brandon, my stepmother's son, slid into the chair I had just reached for. Calm. Comfortable. Like he'd been waiting. But what my father didn't know, what nobody in that room full of colleagues, executives, and family friends knew, was that his real son had been quietly positioning himself as the sole beneficiary of my father's retirement for the past 8 months. And my wife had the paperwork in her jacket pocket. Before I tell you how that unfolded, take a second to like and subscribe, but only if stories like this hit something real for you. And drop your city and local time in the comments. I read everyone. My name is Ethan Purcell. I'm 31 years old. I'm a structural engineer. And this is the story of the night I almost lost my father, and the truth that nearly destroyed everything he built. My father, Richard Purcell, spent 35 years as a foreman at a manufacturing plant outside Dayton, Ohio. He punched in at 6, punched out at 4, and believed in two things: showing up on time and building things that didn't collapse under pressure. On Saturdays, he dragged me out to job sites in steel-toed boots 2 sizes too big for my feet. I was 9 the first time he set a hard hat on my head and pointed up at a beam running across an unfinished ceiling. "See that?" he said. "That's load-bearing. It carries weight nobody thinks about. If it fails, everything fails." I didn't understand a word of it back then, but I listened. Years later, when I became a structural engineer, I realized he hadn't just been teaching me about steel and concrete. He was teaching me about responsibility, about invisible weight, about how the things holding everything up are rarely the things people notice. My mother, Linda, was an ER nurse. She worked night shifts so she could be home when I got off the school bus. She smelled like antiseptic and lavender. She sang off-key while she cooked, and she had this way of touching my shoulder when she passed by, like she was taking inventory, making sure I was still there. Our kitchen revolved around a small oak table my dad built the year I was born. 3 chairs, one for him, one for her, one for me. No extras, no missing pieces, Dad used to say, tapping the wood like it was sacred. When I was 11, my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 14 months later, she was gone. I was 12 years old when I learned what silence really weighs. My father didn't fall apart where I could see it. He kept going to work. He kept making dinner. He kept sitting at that oak table every night, my chair across from his. My mother's chair stayed empty. I never asked him to leave it that way. He just did. For 3 years after she died, it was just the two of us in that house. The air felt thicker. Conversations were shorter. But the structure held. We still ate at that table. We still kept her picture on the wall above the sink. We still watered the black-eyed Susans she'd planted the spring before she got sick. The grief was heavy, but it was ours. When I was 15, my dad told me he'd met someone. "She won't replace your mom," he said. I believed him. At that point, I still thought foundations couldn't be rewritten. I thought if something had been built right the first time, it would stay standing. I didn't know yet how quietly a structure can be altered from the inside, how you can remove one load-bearing beam at a time, and nobody notices until the ceiling starts to shift. Victoria Ashford walked into our lives wearing a cream cashmere wrap and a smile so controlled it felt rehearsed. She was polished, divorced, careful with her words, the kind of woman who made eye contact just a second longer than necessary, like she was studying the room for weaknesses. The first night Dad brought her over for dinner, she carried a bottle of wine that probably cost more than everything in our refrigerator combined. She complimented the curtains my mom had picked out, asked me about school, told my dad he must be proud of raising such a steady young man. She didn't push. That was the dangerous part. Victoria had a son, Brandon, 2 years younger than me, athletic, outgoing, quick with jokes. He called my dad sir the first time they met. By the second week, he was calling him Rick. By the third month, it was Dad. My father didn't correct him. They got married when I was 15. Small ceremony. Victoria wore ivory. Brandon stood beside my father in a tailored gray suit like he already belonged there. I wore the only blazer I owned at the time, navy. My mother's. Within 6 months, things started shifting. Small things. The oak table disappeared first. "It's outdated," Victoria said gently. "We need something more modern." Dad agreed. The marble-top dining set arrived a week later. The oak table was moved to the garage. The first Thanksgiving after the wedding. I came downstairs and my chair, the one Dad had carved EP into with a pocket knife when I was 8, was gone. We needed a matching set, Victoria said, smoothing a linen napkin across the marble. Brandon moved in full-time around then. He took over the guest room. Victoria redecorated it, fresh paint, framed sports photos, a new desk. He laughed loudly at dinner. He told stories. He leaned back in his chair like he'd always been there. My father, who hadn't cried once since my mother's funeral, got misty-eyed the first time Brandon called him Dad in front of guests. I watched from the kitchen doorway. I didn't say anything. That was my first mistake. When I left for college at 18, Clemson, structural engineering, full scholarship, Dad helped me carry my boxes into the dorm. He stood in the parking lot for a long time after I told him I'd be fine. Victoria didn't come. She had a migraine. Every time I came home after that, something else was gone. Mom's photos moved from the living room to the hallway, then to a shelf in the basement. Her recipe box vanished from the counter. Her garden was ripped up and replaced with ornamental grass that didn't bloom. By junior year, my bedroom had become Brandon's home gym. When I asked where my things were, Victoria pointed to 3 cardboard boxes stacked in the garage next to the oak table. We needed the space, sweetheart. Brandon already had space, but I didn't argue. Victoria never took anything all at once. She took it piece by piece, framed every change as practical, efficient, necessary. And my father, who could identify a hairline crack in a steel beam from 30 feet away, never seemed to notice the structural damage happening inside his own house. I met Claire when I was 25 at a structural integrity conference in Chicago. I was presenting on bridge stress distribution. She was speaking on financial fraud detection in municipal contracts. We ended up at the same hotel bar arguing about whether numbers or steel were easier to manipulate. Steel doesn't lie, I told her. People do, she replied. We talked for 3 hours. We got married 2 years later at a courthouse with 12 guests. My dad came. He wore a navy tie I'd bought him years ago. Victoria came too. Brandon stood beside her, hands in his pockets, scanning the room like he was assessing market value. Outside the courthouse, before they left, Dad squeezed my shoulder and said, "Your mom would have liked her." That was the last time he looked me in the eye without something guarded behind it. 3 years before the retirement party, I was managing a bridge inspection in Tennessee when Christmas crept up on me. The contractor had cut corners on expansion joints, real load-bearing issues, the kind that kill people if ignored. I couldn't leave until the remediation plan was signed off. On December 23rd, I called Dad. Voicemail. "Hey, I'm stuck on site. I'm sorry I can't make it home for Christmas. I'll come in January. I love you." No call back? I texted Christmas morning. No reply. New Year's Day. I called again, voicemail. I tried the landline. Victoria answered. "Your father doesn't want to talk right now," she said evenly. "You should respect that." So I did. I gave him space, but I kept calling. Once a week, sometimes twice. For 3 years, 147 calls, 42 texts, not one response. Twice I drove to the house. Twice Victoria met me at the door, arms crossed. "He doesn't want to see you, Ethan. Please stop making this harder than it has to be." I could have pushed past her. I didn't. If my father wanted to cut me out, I wasn't going to beg for entry. That was pride, and Victoria understood exactly how to weaponize it. 8 weeks before the retirement party, Claire got a phone call from a number she didn't recognize. An older woman. Careful voice. "Is this Claire Purcell? My name is Donna Webb. I work in benefits administration at Richard Purcell's company. I believe you should attend the retirement event." Claire didn't tell me what the call was about, not yet. She just said, "We're going." The official invitation landed in my work inbox a week later, not from my father, not from Victoria, from the company's event coordinator. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the retirement of Richard Purcell. 35 years of dedicated service. Willowbrook Country Club, 6:00 p.m. Black tie optional." I stared at that email for a long time. "He hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, I told Claire. "That's exactly why you need to be there," she said. In a room full of people. Something about the way she said that felt intentional. I didn't press. I focused on what I would wear. I chose my mother's navy blazer. Willowbrook sat at the end of a private drive lined with trimmed hedges and stone pillars. Inside, chandeliers, white linen tables, a podium with a framed photo of my father shaking hands with the company CEO. Everything polished, expensive, controlled. I found the seating chart near the entrance. Head table: Richard Purcell, Victoria Purcell, Brandon Ashford, 3 senior executives. My name wasn't there. Aunt Janet had been placed near the back, close to the service corridor. I should have walked out right then. Instead, I stepped inside. Victoria intercepted us in the foyer. Black dress, silk scarf. Smile like a camera flash. "Oh, Ethan, I didn't think you'd actually come," the invitation said. "Family," I replied. "Of course." She guided us not toward the head table, not toward my father, but to a small 2-person table wedged beside a pillar near the kitchen doors. No name card, no centerpiece. Just 2 chairs and a bread basket. From there, I could see everything. My father sat at the head table wearing a Cartier watch Victoria had gifted him for their anniversary. Brandon sat at his right, leaning in close, laughing at something one of the executives said. He looked like he belonged there. Dad glanced in my direction once. Our eyes met. He looked away first. Aunt Janet appeared at my shoulder. She leaned down, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad you came, honey." Then 4 words. They changed his papers. Before I could ask what she meant, Victoria stepped to the podium. Behind her, the slideshow began. 35 years of my father's life flickered across the screen. Factory floors, company picnics, award ceremonies, then family photos. Victoria and Richard at vineyards, Brandon and Richard at football games, holiday portraits on the porch of my childhood home. Not one photo of me. Not one photo of my mother. Victoria smiled at the room. And a special recognition to Richard's son, his pride and joy, Brandon. Applause filled the ballroom. And that was when I stood up. I didn't look at Claire when I stood up. If I had, I might have stayed seated. Instead, I walked straight through the center of the ballroom, past middle managers and their wives, past the VP who paused mid-sentence to watch me cross the room, 80 people tracking my steps like I was approaching a witness stand. The head table sat on a low platform 6 inches high, just enough to make it feel like a stage. Brandon saw me first. His smile flickered. There was one empty chair at the far end of the table. A colleague who hadn't shown up. I stepped onto the platform and rested my hand on the back of that chair. "Dad," Richard looked up slowly. "It's been 3 years," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Can we talk?" Silence settled across the table. Victoria leaned toward him and whispered something I couldn't hear. I watched his jaw tighten, watched the wall go up behind his eyes. He pushed his chair back and stood. For half a second, I thought he was going to hug me. Instead, he put both hands on my shoulders and shoved. I went backward off the platform. My heel clipped the edge. I hit the hardwood flat across my side. The seam of my mother's navy blazer tore along the elbow with a sharp, ripping sound that carried farther than it should have. "That seat is for my real son," he said, loud enough for the entire room. "You lost the right to sit here when you turned your back on this family. Get out, from the floor." I watched Brandon slide into the empty chair, like it had been waiting for him. Forks hovered mid-air. Conversations died mid-word. No one moved. My wallet had fallen open beside me. A photograph slipped halfway out of me at 5 years old on my father's shoulders at a construction site, hard hat crooked. Both of us laughing. I didn't cry. I stared up at him. And the worst part wasn't the shove. It was the certainty in his face. I was halfway to standing when I heard a chair move. Not mine. Claire's. She didn't rush. She didn't raise her voice. She buttoned her suit jacket with one precise motion and adjusted her cuffs the same way she does before presenting audit findings to a boardroom full of executives who think they're untouchable. Victoria saw her first. "Claire," she called out smoothly, projecting warmth for the room. "I think it's best if you take Ethan home. He's clearly upset." Claire didn't look at her. She walked straight to me, offered her hand, and pulled me to my feet. Her eyes dropped briefly to the torn seam on my sleeve. Her jaw tightened, just once. Then it was gone. She turned to my father. "Mr. Purcell," she said calmly, "before we leave, I have one question." "I don't have anything to say to you," my father replied. "Take him and go." "I understand," Claire said evenly. "But when was the last time you personally checked your phone messages?" The question landed wrong. You could feel it. Victoria stepped forward immediately. "This is neither the time nor the place." Claire finally looked at her. "Actually," she said, voice steady, "this is exactly the time and place. I need to pause here for a second, because at that moment, I was ready to walk out. I was ready to let him keep the life Victoria had built around him. But Claire had been sitting quietly all evening with something inside her jacket pocket, and what she was about to lay on that table wasn't emotion. It was proof. Victoria recovered fast. She stepped slightly in front of my father, one hand resting on his arm like she was steadying him. "Everyone, I'm so sorry for this disruption," she said, turning toward the room with practiced composure. "Please, enjoy your dinner. This is Richard's night. Her tone was warm, controlled, the gracious hostess managing an unfortunate outburst. Claire didn't raise her voice. Mr. Purcell, she said again, ignoring Victoria completely. When was the last time you personally reviewed your 401k beneficiary designation? My father frowned. Your retirement account? Claire clarified. The beneficiary listed to receive it. Victoria's posture shifted. Subtle, defensive. Richard doesn't need to answer that, she said sharply. This is a private family matter. No, Claire replied. It's a financial one. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She stepped onto the edge of the platform and placed it on the white linen tablecloth in front of my father. The room quieted again. This contains 2 beneficiary forms. Claire continued. One filed 12 years ago. One filed 8 months ago. My father's eyes moved from the envelope to Victoria. Then back again. I haven't changed anything, he said slowly. I would remember. Claire opened the envelope and laid the documents side by side. The first form was dated 12 years earlier. Primary beneficiary Ethan Purcell, 50%. Secondary estate of Linda Purcell, 50%. The signature at the bottom was my father's. The heavy downstroke on the P. The slight curve on the R. I'd seen that signature on permission slips and birthday cards my entire life. Claire slid the second form forward. Dated 8 months ago. Beneficiary Brandon Ashford, 100%. The signature looked similar. But it wasn't right. My father picked it up, brought it closer to his face. His brows drew together. This isn't my signature, he said quietly. The R is wrong. I looped the R. This one's straight. Victoria's voice rose half a pitch. These are fabricated. Claire printed those herself. Claire didn't react. I'm a forensic accountant, she said calmly. My job is identifying altered financial documents. I compared this signature to 27 archived copies from your company records. It does not match. She let that settle. And that's not the only issue. Victoria's fingers tightened on my father's sleeve. Richard. Don't engage. They're trying to confuse you, Claire continued as if she hadn't spoken. 8 months ago. This beneficiary change was submitted electronically from a personal Gmail account, not your company email, not through HR. That's irregular. According to your benefits administrator, you have never once filed retirement paperwork electronically in 35 years. My father looked up sharply. Donna, as if on cue. A silver-haired woman stood from a table near the back. Donna Webb. I flagged the discrepancy 2 months ago, she said, stepping forward. The signature didn't match our internal records, and Mr. Purcell has always submitted forms in person. Always. Victoria turned on her. You had no right. I had every obligation, Donna said evenly. Protecting employee retirement assets is literally my job. The air in the room shifted. Claire took one step closer to my father. There's one more factor, she said. Brandon's company failed earlier this year. Public filings show approximately $180,000 in outstanding debt tied to his name. All eyes turned to Brandon. His face had gone pale. That's not relevant, Victoria snapped. That's his private business. It becomes relevant, Claire said quietly, when the entire retirement account, estimated at approximately $420,000, is suddenly redirected to him alone. My father's head moved slowly toward Brandon. Is that true? He asked. Brandon didn't answer. Silence. Then, softer, Dad. I didn't ask for. Did you know? My father pressed. Victoria stepped in again. Richard, this is ridiculous. Even if there was paperwork, you signed it. You've been stressed about retirement. You don't remember everything. My mind is fine, my father said. And this time there was steel in it. He looked back down at the forged signature. Then at me. Then at Claire. The certainty I'd seen in his face minutes earlier was gone, replaced by something else. Doubt. Real doubt, and, for the first time that night, the weight in the room shifted away from me. Claire reached back into the envelope and pulled out a stapled packet. Phone records, pages of dates and timestamps. Mr. Purcell, she said gently. You were told your son stopped calling, that he chose to walk away. She placed the packet beside the beneficiary forms. These are Ethan's carrier records from the past 3 years. My father looked down, line after line. Call, 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 every Sunday, sometimes Wednesdays, too. 147 outgoing calls to his number, 42 text messages, 360 consecutive weeks of reaching out. I never saw these, he said faintly. My phone never rang. Claire didn't hesitate. Please take out your phone. Victoria stepped forward immediately. This is absurd. Take out your phone, sir, Claire repeated. Steady but respectful. Go to settings, then blocked contacts. The entire room held its breath. My father pulled his phone from his pocket. His hands weren't steady anymore. He tapped through the menus slowly, like someone navigating unfamiliar terrain. Settings, phone, blocked contacts, one number. Mine. The area code matched the city where Claire and I lived. He stared at the screen. Then he looked up. "You blocked him," he said. It wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. Victoria opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. "He was toxic," she said finally. Voice thin. "Every time he called, you got upset. You started questioning things. I was protecting this family. From my son," my father asked. "You were confused," she insisted. "You were vulnerable after Linda died. Ethan never accepted our marriage. He was trying to divide us." I felt something go cold inside me. Divide us. For 3 years, I'd been calling every week, leaving messages that said the same thing in different words. "I'm here. I love you. I'll come whenever you want." My father's voice dropped to a whisper. "He called me every week." Claire nodded once. Almost without exception, my father scrolled back up through the call logs Claire had printed. His finger traced down the page like he was measuring something. "Christmas Eve," he muttered. Claire inhaled slowly. "There's something else," she said. She pulled out one final page. 3 years ago. December 24th, 11:47 p.m. Ethan sent a text. "I'm sorry I can't make it home. I love you." The carrier record shows the message was delivered and opened. The room tightened. "I never saw that," my father said. Claire met his eyes. "The read receipt shows it was accessed from your device. 12 minutes later, the number was added to your blocked list." All heads turned to Victoria. Her composure finally fractured. "Yes," she snapped. "I blocked him. Because he wouldn't move on. Because every time he called, you spiraled back into the past, into Linda, into that house, into guilt, into my son," my father corrected, voice breaking on the last word. Brandon stood abruptly. "Mom, stop!" Victoria spun toward him. "Everything I did was for you. Do you understand that after your father left us with nothing, I wasn't going to let that happen again? You had debt. You had no safety net. I had to make sure of what my father demanded, that he wouldn't walk away with everything." She shouted, pointing at me. The words hung in the air. Not about love. Not about healing. About assets. About control. My father looked at me across the room. For the first time in 3 years, I saw recognition. Real recognition. Not anger. Not certainty. Recognition. "You never stopped calling?" he asked. "No," I said. My voice was steady. "I never stopped." He looked back at the phone in his hand. At the blocked number. At the forged signature. At the beneficiary forms redirecting $420,000. At the empty space where his understanding of the last 3 years used to be. Something shifted inside him. The structure he'd been standing on wasn't solid. It was hollow. And he was finally seeing the cracks. My father stepped down from the platform, not quickly, not dramatically. Slowly. Like a man walking through water. 80 people watched him cross that ballroom, the same room where, 20 minutes earlier, he had shoved me to the floor. He stopped 3 feet in front of me, up close. He looked older than I remembered. The lines around his mouth deeper, his shoulders heavier. His eyes clear now. Not confused, not defensive, clear. His gaze dropped to my torn sleeve. "That was your mother's," he said quietly. "Yes." He swallowed. "I pushed you." "You did?" "In front of everyone." "Yes." The admission cost him something. I could see it. He glanced back toward the head table, the Cartier watch glinting under the chandelier. The beneficiary forms spread across linen. The blocked number still glowing on his phone screen. Then, he looked at me again. "I believed what I was told," he said. "Because it was easier than asking harder questions. Easier than admitting I might have been wrong. Easier than facing that I didn't know how to hold this family together after your mother died." He paused. "That's on me, not on you." The room was silent. "I'm sorry," he said, louder this time. "For tonight. For the calls I didn't answer. For letting your mother's pictures be taken down. For letting you feel like you didn't belong in your own home." My throat tightened. But I didn't move toward him. "I accept your apology," I said evenly. "But accepting it isn't the same as trusting you again." He nodded once. "I know. This isn't fixed," I continued. "This is the start of fixing it." Another nod. Not defensive, not wounded, just aware. For the first time in 3 years, we were standing on the same ground, not repaired, but level. Victoria wasn't done. She stepped forward again. Voice sharp. Composure fraying at the edges. "Can't anyone see what's happening?" she demanded, turning toward the guests. "This was planned. They came here tonight to humiliate Richard at his own retirement. This is coordinated. It's an attack. No one answered. No one rushed to her defense. My father didn't even turn around. The only person who planned anything tonight, he said quietly, was you. That landed harder than anything else had. The seating chart, the slideshow without Ethan, without Linda. You staged this entire night to make my son invisible. Victoria scanned the room for allies, executives, spouses, old co-workers who'd known her for over a decade. What she found were lowered eyes and tightened jaws. Phil, one of Dad's longtime supervisors, spoke first. Rick, he said gently, that signature's not yours. We all know your handwriting. Another nod from a table near the back. The narrative was gone. Brandon stood frozen at the edge of the platform. For the first time, all evening, he looked his age, not polished, not confident, just cornered. Brandon, my father said without raising his voice. Did you know? Brandon's silence lasted 3 seconds too long. I didn't know about the signature, he said finally. I swear. I didn't know she forged it. But you knew he was calling, I said. His jaw tightened. He didn't deny it. I wanted a father, he said quietly. Mine left when I was 6. Richard was the first man who... You don't get one by deleting someone else's son, I replied. He nodded once, small, tight. Victoria snapped toward him. Everything I did was for you. For me, he shot back, voice cracking. You just destroyed the only stable thing I had. That was the moment she lost him. Brandon stepped off the platform and walked toward the exit without looking back. Victoria called after him. But the doors closed behind him. Silence swallowed the room. My father turned to Donna. What happens now? Donna didn't hesitate. The retirement accounts will be frozen pending formal investigation, she said. The beneficiary change request will be reviewed by HR and legal. The email submission has already been traced to a residential IP address associated with your home. Victoria's face drained of color. There was also a prior attempt 2 years ago, Donna continued. A request to add Brandon as a dependent beneficiary to your company life insurance policy. It was rejected due to ineligibility. My father closed his eyes briefly. How much, he asked. Combined pension and 401k valuation sits just over $420,000, Claire answered calmly. Had you filed final retirement paperwork without challenge, that amount would have transferred directly to Brandon. Everything he had earned in 35 years. Redirected. My father looked at Victoria. You erased my son, he said. You forged my name. And you nearly took everything I built. I was protecting our future. She insisted weakly. Our future, he repeated. Or yours. There was no more performance left in her. No wounded wife tone, no poised composure, just anger, raw and exposed. I won't be spoken to like this, she said, lifting her chin. You won't be spoken to at all, my father replied. Not tonight. Go home. We'll speak with attorneys. The word attorneys landed with finality. Victoria picked up her purse slowly. The heels that had once clicked confidently across the hardwood now sounded hollow. At the doorway, she turned and looked at me. There was no pretense left in her eyes, only fury. I held her gaze, didn't blink, didn't speak. After 3 years of silence, I had learned how to stand still. The doors closed behind her. The ballroom exhaled. What had started as a retirement celebration had turned into an audit. And the only thing still standing in that room was the truth. Claire and I drove home in near silence that night. The highway was empty. Streetlights passed in steady intervals, like metronomes measuring something I hadn't yet processed. I kept looking down at the torn sleeve of my mother's blazer. The fabric was still strong, just one seam split where the thread had given way. Some damage can be repaired, some damage leaves a scar. I should have told you sooner, Claire said quietly. Eyes on the road, you knew for 2 weeks. Donna called me months ago. I verified everything before I brought it to your father. I wasn't going to give you hope unless it was airtight. That was Claire. She didn't deal in emotion when evidence was required. There's one more thing, she added. My chest tightened. Your Christmas text, the one 3 years ago. It was marked as read, 11:47 p.m. Christmas Eve. 12 minutes later. Your number was blocked. I stared out the windshield. So he'd seen it. Or at least someone had. I love you, Dad, I'd written. And someone had erased it. A week after the party, HR confirmed the forgery. The signature analysis didn't match archived documents. The Gmail account tied to the submission was registered under Victoria's maiden name. The beneficiary designation was restored to its original structure: Ethan Purcell, 50%. Estate of Linda Purcell, 50%. The way it had been 12 years earlier. My father met with a divorce attorney the following Thursday. Victoria moved most of her belongings out while he was at the plant closing meetings. No confrontation. No apology. Just empty drawers and a closet stripped of designer labels. Brandon sent me an email 2 days later. I didn't know about the signature. I should have said something about the phone. I wanted him to choose me. I read it 3 times. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wasn't ready to decide what forgiveness meant. The first phone call from my father came that Saturday. We sat in silence for the first 10 seconds. The same kind of silence that used to fill our kitchen after my mom died. Heavy. Familiar. I don't know how to fix this, he said. You don't fix 3 years in one call, I replied. But you make the call, he exhaled slowly. I'm wearing the Timex, he said. I blinked. The $30 Timex I'd bought him when I was 16. The one that had lived in his dresser drawer under the Cartier box Victoria gave him. I figured I should start wearing the one that meant something, that mattered more than he knew. 2 weeks later, I drove to his house alone. Claire stayed in the car. Take your time, she said. The front door was unlocked. The house felt different immediately. Not brighter, not happier. Just honest. The marble dining table was gone. In its place, centered in the kitchen, was the oak table. He'd pulled it from the garage, sanded it, refinished it. The grain was darker now, seasoned by years of neglect, but the joints were tight, the legs were level. My chair was there, EP carved into the back. It wobbled slightly. Glue's still setting, he said from the doorway. That's okay, I replied. So are we. On the wall above the sink, my mother's photograph was back where it belonged. I ran my hand across the table's surface and felt the grooves from years of dinners, arguments, homework, silence. We sat down, 2 mugs of black coffee, no marble, no linen, just wood. He had his phone on the table beside him. Screen unlocked, blocked contacts list, empty. He'd figured it out on his own. We didn't talk about everything that afternoon. You don't pour concrete all at once, you let it settle. People ask me if I've forgiven him. The truth, forgiveness isn't a switch. It's physical therapy. Repetitive, uncomfortable, measured in millimeters. Some mornings I wake up fine. Some mornings I remember the hardwood floor, the sound of fabric tearing, his voice saying, "Real son," and I have to choose again. But here's what I've learned. Silence protects manipulators. I told myself I was preserving my dignity by not forcing my way back into that house. What I was really doing was giving someone else uninterrupted time to rewrite reality. At the same time, loyalty without boundaries becomes self-destruction. There's a line between fighting for family and losing yourself in the process. You have to know where it is. 4 months later, the divorce finalized because the beneficiary change involved fraud. Victoria received no portion of the retirement funds. The forged documents were referred to local authorities. Whether charges move forward is still pending. Brandon is repaying his debt through structured installments. No safety net, no redirected pension. Donna retired the same quarter as my father. HR gave her a formal commendation for protecting employee assets. She still sends him articles about retirement planning. He pretends to read them. My father joined a support group for people manipulated financially by family members. He goes every other Tuesday. He's learning how to use his smartphone properly. Video calls still show mostly his forehead. I don't correct him. The oak table has 4 chairs now. My father, me, Claire, Aunt Janet. Not 3, not 5, just the ones who chose to stay without taking. If you're listening to this and you've ever had your seat taken from you emotionally, legally, publicly, I want you to hear this. You're not invisible. You were just surrounded by people who chose not to look. If you could say one honest sentence to the family member who hurt you most, not to fix it, just to say it, what would it be? Write it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel less alone tonight, that's enough. This story was created by the Fish Tells Stories team for entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as legal or personal advice. That's the end of mine.